Yeah, wasn't like Mouse doing it for like years and years? I I don't
The
actually don't know much about it, but
Yeah, he's been around in it for a while.
yeah, I listened, and if I had a blank face on the whole time, like that was reality. I'm still learning. I'm slowly putting your people in.
oh cool, yeah.
If I if I if
Look at
I if you see someone and I haven't added them, just let me know that I'm behind.
awesome. Yeah, Mona and I have been running the Balanced Breakfast uh Denver chapter since about 2015. And yeah, I'm pumped about today and our speakers. We got just Lamar here, Kori, Hazel, and Jelie. I think she's still showing up. Yeah. There's Mona. Yeah, so we we're thinking about what to have the panel be based on, and we came up with the art of storytelling because all of three of the speakers are like writers and storytellers. Joseph has a really cool blog on his site.
Yeah, what's up, everyone?
Hey
Hey,
Mona.
Uh,
Hey Corey. Hey Reed. Good to see everybody.
nice to see
Hey,
everyone.
yeah, I am so stoked to be here, calling in from in between all the magic. So like the music world is just getting started. So it seems, and I'm kind of in between that and feeling so stoked on things actually happening on Saturday nights. What's that
Yeah.
about?
It's cool to see for
Um,
sure.
yeah, I am wondering, uh, are we wanting to get started with it? Are we already started with this? I know I just hopped in, but
Yeah, I think probably we should just like do an intro for we could start with Corey. Do you want to start and just kind of give us like a background of like your music trajectory and also your writing journey?
Yeah. So my current job is like the music editor of 303 magazine in Denver. I'm also a talent buyer in that role and creative project manager. So kind of like a jack of all trades in terms of kind of running a lot of our activations, both editorial wise and physically. I started kind of my writing journey in high school, actually. I was like selected as one of like 6 people for that year to kind of like write on my college admins my college admittance process with the New York Times. And so that's kind of like was a big leap and a jump to start with, but it kind of like led me into really appreciating writing. And yeah, and here I am a couple years later, um, doing a thing, but in an area that I'm very passionate about and kind of advancing Denver's cultural scene. So yeah, it's a little bit about me.
Yeah, I think that's when I met you. You were writing, or like, yeah, it was around that time when you started writing for 303.
Yeah, I've been with it now for 6 years, I think. Yeah, coming up on 6.
that's beautiful. Where are you from, Corey?
I'm from Denver. So I went to
Amazing.
school in Arizona and I came back.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And you DJ.
I do DJ as well. I have a bunch of just like side hustles and things. And I'm a photographer for 303 as well.
That's what I was going to say. Is also a really, really great photographer,
I appreciate that.
in addition to all the other things.
Thanks.
What instruments do you play?
Me?
Yeah.
So I'm more of like by an ear type of person. So I can like hear something in my head and I just kind of do it. I'm more used to being a producer and a singer. So a lot of like if I'm writing on music, it comes from kind of that place of where I'll like hum it, think about it, and then I'll just like make it happen. And then it just kind of organically comes together. But I'm also very just like rhythmically inclined. So if I'm hearing a beat, it just kind of happens in my head. And then I'm like, okay, what would this be cool with? Oh, let's use some power tools. Let's do some like other things. Let's use this sample and chop it up and like flip it around. So it's like, it's, I don't know, it makes sense to me somehow.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Do you like in Ableton or Logic, or what do you use?
Ableton is my like, has been my kind of my thing for a bit.
Nice.
I'm an Ableton stan.
And you are too, Joseph, right?
I'm actually primarily in Logic. I only worked with Ableton, like not even enough to really speak of. I'm more of a Logic person, but I don't know much about Ableton.
Oh yeah, sorry, I get mixed up. Yeah,
No worries, no
your
worries.
production is crazy, Joseph.
Thank you.
Yeah, Joseph, we're gonna switch to introducing you. Thank you so much, Kori. I love you are like this reminder of just like how many creative people are so multifaceted, and especially to make it work and to like sustain, you know, being a creative person. We often find ourselves in all of these different pockets of figuring out how to like you know, DJ here, take a photo here, and I think that's really cool.
Yeah,
Joseph, what is up? What do you do? And for these people who don't know you, and where are you from?
Yeah, totally. Well, my name is Joseph Lamar. I'm from Colorado Springs originally and currently live in Denver. I'm a singer, songwriter, producer, and many other things. As far as my musical background is concerned, I started off in church at a really young age, singing and playing piano as well as like playing drums, and then sort of branched out into like writing music and producing my own music. And now I'm working on like guitar and bass as well. I released an album called Sin Act One in November. It's kind of a sci-fi concept album. And also I mentioned church earlier. It's also kind of a place that I've kind of put a lot of my sort of ex-Christian angst, but it's also an exploration of, you know, spirituality and, you know, becoming oneself. So I think my direction has been one of like trying to find and create a sense of like self-actualization. So definitely like a lot of my music does that. And with that particular album, I was really concerned with like, I don't really want to write any like love songs or anything on this. I really want to like focus on, you know, an individual becoming themselves and what does that look like, and sort of a sense of like self-sovereignty when maybe you felt disenfranchised or felt marginal in any sort of way. I was really concerned with like trying to decondition through the music and through the visuals, and very visually oriented person. I've done two music videos for this album. I did one with a filmmaker named Dylan Lee Lowry for the Paradise One music video, and then for the Fear music video, I worked with the filmmaker named Drummond West. And yeah, you know, I love music, I love visuals, and you know, I have a lot more stuff on the way.
Yeah, I love that. I was super the music videos that you released. I would love to encourage both you and Kori and Jelie to like, you know, put your links in the chat so people can connect to, you know, your art and your work. But the music videos that you've put out are like totally next level in like the vision. Very much like left me in this place of, I don't know, contemplation and just like thinking, and I felt like really touched in really strange, peculiar ways. And that is a skill, you know, definitely when we talk about like storytelling, you like tell stories in your most recent music videos, and yeah, like wonderful job on that.
That means a lot. Thank you.
Yeah. Do we have Jelie here yet? What's up, Jelie? I see that you're
Jelie.
here.
What's up, everyone? How y'all doing? Y'all look like you're doing really good. I guess that was weird.
So good. So happy to see you. Jelie, please let these people who do not know of your greatness know who you are, where you're from.
Okay, yeah. I'm Jelie, born and raised Denver, Colorado, and Aurora area is kind of the same thing, except for, the literal sense. I am a rapper, producer, engineer. I also am a sound designer, more recently for Reason Studios. If any of you have ever used Reason, the DAW, now helping develop sounds for them. Also teach youth at Youth on Record. I'm in a after school program there called Open Lab. Also do podcasting workshops pretty regularly, teaching youth about from everything A to Z audio, how to record themselves, how to mix their own music. Also working with some students with disabilities on helping them get their voices out there. One of the youth I work with, his name is Julian, and he's wheelchair bound. He's not able to speak. Like, I can understand him because I've worked with him a lot, but he's not able to enunciate clearly for everyone else to understand. So we produce tracks together and we create the lyrics together, and we use my voice in order to get his music out there. Actually, yesterday I was able to get DJ Alicia to play his song on 102.3, which was really dope. And I'll in my introduction right there, Jelie, and I'll put my website in the chat.
Yes, please do. Yeah. I am just like so stoked to have y'all's represented, Kori and Joseph and Jelie as like the people who the Balanced Breakfast community across the nation get to see and get to like drop into, like the greatness that happens here in Denver. And so to keep kind of all of this moving forward in what we're talking about, and the theme of this panel. I'll ask the first question and then I'll read if you want to ask the second one. But what does it mean to be a storyteller in this creative world right now? As like kind of our first question, especially because it's such a saturated market these days, and to tell a story is really like the edge that kind of brings people in when there's so much different content. And for all of you guys, what does it mean for you to be a storyteller, to storytell in this creative world that we live in that's so saturated? And I will go ahead and ask Joseph this question, and then after that, Jelie, and then Kori, if that for that order for this one.
Yeah, what does it mean to be a storyteller? It's a really good question. It's something that is has like a timeless importance, I think. I think of like storytelling in terms of like a preservation of and sharing of important things about our experience, things that are, it's like timeless and relatable, things that make us feel interconnected. I think that, some of the most profound experiences I've had when like listening to an album or watching a film or something like that, or reading a book is, those moments where you feel less alone. And even, stuff from a long time ago, and you say that, oh, wow, someone from several decades ago or several hundred years ago was feeling or thinking similar things. It makes things feel more manageable, and it makes it feel as if there's a sort of like common bond among humans, or something there that can be created in that way. And I think especially, when times of being separate from people, there's been so much less, socializing, at least over a lot of 2020. I think people are kind of like re-emerging, in recent months, and I am too, spending time with people more than I was at the start of this. But before that, it was a lot of like not seeing people you were accustomed to seeing. And so something like a performance can be so memorable and so meaningful for people. I remember doing like a live stream performance, and a lot of people were just really glad about and had a lot of really cool things to say, because they said it felt, even though they were in their living room or in their bedroom or wherever they were, they're saying it felt like a concert, and it felt like being at a show again. And that's impactful. It just shows the importance of those experiences. The arts have a way of transcending different forms of separation, whether it's physical separation or whether it's separation by time, or whether it's separation by creed or even languages. It can connect people, and a story can connect people. And I guess the last thing I would say, and I mean, maybe I've been long-winded enough, but the last thing I would say is that it's a way of telling a big message in a small way. You can kind of condense things into symbols or characters or a theme, something that someone can revisit over and over and still get something from it.
Very well said. I love how you describe storytelling in a very like storytelling manner. I appreciate that. Jelie, what are your thoughts on this?
I believe storytelling kind of gives you, not to rag on anybody, but it gives you like an artistic advantage, because you're able to touch people's emotions more effectively with a story, either like a story or like sensory types of lyrics. It's really easy to grab the listener's attention and give them something to come back to. And I mean, sometimes a story can be told without being explicit on what happened. Like those sad songs we hear that we always go back to when we're sad, or those happy songs we put on when we're happy. We don't know what happened to Pharrell, why he was so happy, but when we hear it, we might be able to attach some current experience to that feeling of happiness. So I think being a storyteller through art and expression it gives you the ability. Yeah, exactly. It gives you the ability to reach your audience in more effective ways, and gives you the ability to touch people, which is exactly what I said before in a different way. So yeah, I think that is my answer. I'll leave that there.
Thank you for that perspective, another lens. And then to finish up us on this question, Kori, what are your thoughts?
I kind of feel like it's almost a duty in a sense, where you have this duty to kind of make sense of what others can't always make sense of. And kind of, for me, it's a lot of telling other people's stories besides my own. And so I think, especially in a year of like kind of like so much trauma and whatnot, I think it gives you a lens into how I think storytelling helps you to like cut down to like the nitty gritty of kind of like what each person is giving you at a time. It's hard to describe, but I think the biggest thing I've learned in terms of like storytelling is like, you'll talk to someone and they'll tell you all sorts of things, but there's always like a thread that kind of connects it all. And for me, storytelling is finding that thread and just kind of like weaving it in and seeing like where it leads to, like what's the end point. And sometimes I can be wrong, but like being a storyteller is finding that needle and kind of threading the whole story together from the words of someone else. And I think that, especially when people haven't been heard a lot in 2020, I think like it's a duty to kind of put that needle and thread to use and to kind of pull out as much of their stories as you can.
Yeah, I love that perspective, especially, I'm getting the lens of like the journalistic aspect that you embody and that you come from. Yeah, Reed, what's our next cue for the panelists?
Yeah, so I was curious about like marketing and storytelling, or also just like when you put out a song, what your experience has been with giving it sort of a story package type thing versus not. Because when I've tried to just release a song without like any sort of story, I feel like it kind of flops. But I guess I mean, like, Bon Iver is a really easy example. Like, he went out to the mountains, recorded a song in a cabin for Emma ago. That was like his packaging. I'm curious, like, how you three have experienced it in the release of your own music or in the release of an article.
Are you talking about
And
like
if you have any
differences?
tips.
Are you talking about like the differences between kind of like going into it with the framework of having a story behind it versus not? Or
Yeah, and I guess I'm also curious what's worked for you, and if you've seen any like really good examples of artists putting together sort of a package of a story.
Yeah, and maybe if we go in reverse, so maybe like Kori, Jelie, Joseph.
I think when it comes, I'll kind of break my answer into two parts. From like an article's perspective on like writing, it's kind of like that needle and thread again. It's just like if the whole thing connects and like the person is being truly open with you and telling, like, speaking their truth, and like you're asking the right questions, then it becomes one of those things where it's becomes a story. Because like if you're covering there, more often than not, if you're covering a full project by someone, it's been a whole creative process, and that creative process alone is a story, whether or not they fully know it. And there's always something that kind of triggers what they started with on the album, and something that provoked them to do it. That's why every album is different. And I think you see it more on full projects than just singles, because singles you don't have as much investment just naturally, since it's like a one-off. But when you sit down and decide, hey, this is going to be a full project, there's always like a whole saga involved. From a music aspect, if it's a place of like honesty, or I mean, it doesn't always have to be, but I think kind of knowing your own story and knowing kind of what your headspace is when you're making a song, or like where you want it to be played, or like want kind of like the intention of where you see it, kind of the spaces you kind of see it filling. I think that is a story in itself. Like it can be just like girls want to have fun, and you know where that's going to be going off, and you know like what that's going to make people feel, because you've probably felt it yourself. And I think like if you can kind of distill that for yourself, I think those are kind of like that's storytelling in itself. Sorry if that was like kind of all over the place.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I kind of have two answers. When I release something with a story, it is most often to do with what's happening in the current timeline. So, for example, I made we created a song. It was about, I can't remember what we called it because we had three different names for it. That's pretty bad. But it was released around the time George Floyd was killed. And it just so happened to be about Black Lives Matter and just colored people's rights in general. So a lot of people take advantage of that type of thing, and you could kind of tell when they're taking advantage of it. But sometimes the story is just woven in current events. Other examples I've noticed my friends do is that made songs about animal rights or having clean water, and they found great success in finding people to help them support that because they also are for the same causes. On the flip side of it, I found people, this kind of wouldn't answer the question, but they would kind of skip the self-release process and go with like a television placement type of route. And in that case, they wouldn't necessarily tell a story because it would match the vibe of the visual, which whatever's happened in the show or the movie. But that's kind of off topic. Yeah, that's my answer.
One of the things that comes to mind for me is just like, one, there are narratives everywhere, all around us, and you know, in terms of you know, individual stories, but as it relates to like marketing and music, or also just as it relates to like the kind of forces you see in the world. And you know, as a musician, when you see other musicians who you admire who have succeeded, right, they have a story, you know, and I think everyone on this panel is of a generation of like behind the music or driven or things like that, where like you see, you know, what's the story of how Nelly succeeded, or how, you know, Aaliyah succeeded, or how, you know, Blink 182 or whoever. And I, you know, there was a point when I kind of thought that um, being successful as an artist meant having someone else's success, or trying to reverse engineer someone's success by like trying to cater myself to how they made it in the door or what they did. And you know, there's a lot of freedom in like learning to just like be myself, because in like being myself and accepting who I am, you know, I find that like I already have a narrative, I already have a story, and it's a truer story than I can, you know, make up from bits and pieces of someone else's. You know, somebody else is already living their story better than I can because it's theirs, and they're being themselves better than I can be them because they're them. And you know, when I started to realize that, I realized that um, I don't have to try to copy something that is someone else's like narrative. And as it relates to like marketing, then it's like, you know, what feels authentic to me? Like, you know, is it, you know, authentically what happened and what led to the creation of a song or an album? Or is it something that, an idea that I've created that maybe is imagined, but I imagined it. And in writing like a concept album, it you know, it gave me kind of a context to make sense of like feelings and thoughts that I couldn't like articulate at the time. Like they were so big, I didn't know how to explain them or exactly what I was trying to say. But if, you know, you can find a story, and a lot of it was like flipping through the Bible or like different mythologies or things like that. And I find
level, dude. I know I'm gonna need to level both these guys. Yeah.
Hey,
Oh.
friend Jordan, would you mind muting yourself?
Okay. Yeah, I was saying that that gave me kind of a context to put the emotion and thoughts in sort of a path to like follow, of like almost breadcrumbs or something, to kind of express the ideas, and having a sort of like object or abstraction, or like a group of symbols that you can sort of like direct your energy to, gives you a way of like understanding your work in a way that when you start to market, you can say, okay, now this is what the story is, this is what it means to me. But I'm still learning how to do that, you know, every day or every time I release something, and maybe I always will be.
I love that. I'm thoroughly appreciating like the variety, and I knew that this would happen because you guys are all coming from different places and super like strong in the places that you come from, but I'm just loving like the variety of responses. And there's like a lot of it. I imagine I'll be integrating some of these like bits and pieces throughout the night. Thank you. My the next question, wondering if there are any examples of like storytelling, whether it's a place or whether it was a show or a movie or an experience, what is like an example of storytelling within art that was really captivating to you and potentially influential to the way that you storytell? And this time we'll go Jelie, Joseph, Kori.
Off the top of my head, I know that I was, of course, influenced by a lot of hip hop songs. Early like 90s storytellers. For example, DMX, he had a song called Slippin'. Basically told a story of him from when he grew up, how he grew up to how he ended up where he was 20 years ago. The drug problems he had earlier in his life, and to the movies and seeing his peers on TV and thinking that could be him. Also think about Biggie Smalls, Notorious B.I.G. He told stories. I wanted to be like them, so I would sit there for hours trying to find words that rhymed, that would still be able to tell the story the way that the story is supposed to be told, which is the truthful way. I couldn't bend the truth to make it rhyme, so I had to find words that matched. Yeah, definitely hip hop for me. I'll pass it on.
It's dope. I think that church really influenced me in that way. And even though, my, I guess my personal ideology is different from that of what I grew up with, one of the things that really, really stuck with me is the like drama and the kind of like theatrical and this very I don't know, very the powerful description and like imagery and like the energy of the way that like stories are told in church, whether it's like a ritual of like communion or praise dance or the music or the preaching of sermons. My grandfather was a preacher, and even though I didn't always agree with the things he would preach about, there were definitely these really powerful moments of the way he would use his voice, the way it would rise or like fall, or when he was shouting, or like when he would like whisper and like people had to like really listen to what he was saying, or if he, banged his hand on the pulpit or holds this Bible in his hand, that there's this, this kind of very fluid energy that's like going all these different places. And in the midst of telling a story, it's like the movement, the sound is a story, it is a journey. So like that, and a lot of music I was listening to, a lot of my favorite artists are like I guess like singer songwriter types, or people you consider people who sing and write songs. But I think in the definition of singer songwriter is someone who's sort of like a who you almost consider like a sage or like a griot. There's a term, and I won't be able to say exactly where it comes from, but somewhere in like West Africa, like griot is like the person who has all of the knowledge and collects the history of a people, and is able to like remember all of those things and tell those stories, those important like things that we don't want to forget. And they say that you know, when a griot dies, it's the equivalent of a library being burned down. But it's like that kind of thing, like people who have a depth of knowledge or a depth of emotion or a depth of understanding of the human experience to share, you know, that like inspired me, like Stevie Wonders and your Joni Mitchells and people like that, when like a one line of lyric is like a whole, you know, almost lifetime of things you can like get into and like pick at, and like what were they saying and what do they mean and that sort of thing.
Wow, thank you for telling me about that term, or telling us about that term. I'm definitely going to look more into that. Go ahead, Kori.
Sorry, just didn't mean to like jump on that. I think some things that resonate with me is like growing up just like with a couple albums that kind of just changed my perspective on like how an album could flow together, in terms of like not every song having to just be like on like so on point, but just like creating a feeling instead, just by like the atmosphere, the lyrics, and everything coming together to create something that just like encapsulates a certain vision. For me, like albums like Arcade Fire's like The Suburbs was like one of those for me, where it felt almost cinematic, where you could, and like a lot, even like a lot of how I write is kind of like through the lens of like cinema. I grew up just like such a movie buff as a kid. Just like my dad would take me and watch all these like indie critically acclaimed films, and it was just so much interpretation. And for me, that like also translates into music. And if you can make it feel like a movie, where there's all these different parts coming together and there's like a concrete conclusion, or even if there's a loose end, it just, I think those things are always so enthralling to me, and they tell such great stories. When you get to the end, and it just feels kind of, it feels kind of amazing in a sense to have that kind of be the last thing you hear from a full project, is just like the end credit scene, I want to say, of like the songs and everything just kind of coming together in that way. And when I write, it just like, it feels that way too. Like I'm trying to, if I like just like place myself in a frame of just like, if I were to write a movie on this person, what would it look like out of this conversation? Like, where would we start? Where would the end scene be? Where's the climax? And I kind of like paint that picture, and then it goes where it needs to go. The words just kind of come, and yeah.
And that's awesome. And that's how you write, like, just, yeah, that's really cool. That's how you write articles too, kind of like cinematically.
Yeah, I kind of think of it that way. Like, where, if you had to make a short film on somebody, like what would you include? Like what would you kind of see around them, and like what would you take out for like verbiage? And like I kind of see it almost like, yeah, just kind of like a movie on a person if you had to take a snapshot.
That's awesome. Yeah,
Thanks.
I love these responses. Yeah, great question, Mona. And so I yeah, I guess it's my turn to ask a question, but I was wanting to just like hear what y'all are working on, because I feel like there's so many different projects. Like looking at like Jelie's website, there's just so many things that each of you do. So I was wondering like what you're excited about that you're working on right now, and like what you offer also.
Yeah, maybe we could do Jelie, Kori, Joseph as the lineup.
Cool. Currently I've been working on I guess, non-artist related projects for sound design. So I'm making preset banks for Serum outside of my own music. As far as, well, aside from that, also still sound designing for Reason. But I am working on, I started singing recently. So looking for a vocal coach, but auto-tune has my back for now. So I've started to make a singing project. It'll be the first project I've ever put out singing. So that's what's next for me.
Awesome. From my end, doing a lot of kind of expanding what I do with photography, and also kind of trying to bridge a gap more into video as well. That's something I've been like super interested in, and even just on the writing edge of like more creative ventures that way. I also have like kind of like a secret side music project that I'm trying to make this very high concept, kind of almost in the same way like I have these visions of like movies, like a very vision driven and intentional project where everything kind of fits together, and it's just like a constant evolution of this project that comes from each album, each single, and kind of keeps like a story going. And it's been really kind of cool creating that world, and also creating the vibe and getting creative, and also kind of tearing apart what people kind of think. And it all kind of revolves around pop music. It's kind of reinventing pop music, as if kind of acknowledging that we've all been through something like super traumatic, but also making it not just like sad, like sadcore, just like, oh boy, things are rough, but kind of like taking it into a realm of just like, if the apocalypse happened now, like where will we be? And like, what does that feel like? And where do we end up? And that's been super cool for me to kind of get into, and just kind of creating this almost fantasy, but not fantasy, because we kind of are living in those times. So that's been super engaging for me to work on.
Yeah, there are a few things I'm working on right now. One of the things is a book. During the process of working on this album, I released in November. It was like a 2.5 year process, and I was like keeping journal entries throughout the process. So I have like collected all of those journal entries, as well as like some writing from some of the people who collaborated on the project, and kind of put those together with like lyrics and photos from like the behind the scenes of videos and stuff. And I want to release that in the form of a book, hopefully by like the end of this spring or going into the summer. So there's that. And I'm also working on my next couple of albums. And one in particular is a project I'm really excited about, just because there are so many songs on it that are, some of them are songs that I've been sitting on for a little while, looking for the right album for it to go on. And then I've been writing a lot of songs recently, and I'm really interested in just kind of like making something that's almost like an odyssey, or like a you know, almost like almost that would almost read like, you know, mythology or something if it were a book, in terms of like you know, journeying and transforming along your journey. So it's a project that's going to be very spiritual, in the sense of that like discovering of self and becoming of self, and you know, very diverse in terms of like you know, genre and like sound textures, and a music video. I'm working on one more music video for my album Sin, Act 1. As in that music video and the book will be kind of my final gestures for that project before I kind of go all in on the next album.
Amazing.
Sweet.
I'm-
Go all out, Joseph.
I know.
It's so sweet.
Yeah, I'm thinking, I'm like inspired. I'm like, okay, my album could maybe be not, it could like extend past the release. Sometimes I get so caught up in like an album being done once it's released, and you have like a whole section of your life carved out for this album, so it seems.
I mean, like, speaking of like stories, I do kind of feel like and I don't want to sound corny. It's gonna, as I'm about to say, it's gonna sound corny, and that's fine. But you know that it is feel kind of like a phase of my life, like an era. But really, like, you know, that the album is, it's not just about the album, right? I mean, work on music, and you do want to finish the music you're working on, but it's not just about like, oh, I did the thing. It's about, you know, the growth, the change, and if you're collaborating, it's about building community, you know. And so there's this whole change you go through when you're working on, like Kori was saying, like if you make a single, it's just a single. You know, if you're doing a whole project, like you transform through that process. And so, you know, yeah, when the inception of an album is like kind of almost foreseeing, you know, some change in my life and some ways that I want to grow. So
Yeah, it's like almost like telling you have to say this story now, and it's just like the full story's there. You just need to be put in the studio, and like even though it the whole it's an era, I think it's very much like a snapshot of life and snapshot of just like the narrative that you needed to say and the words that needed to come out at that time. It's just like kind of like giving birth to something. Like that baby was on its way, so there it needs to be, and it's where we were, what happened, how I felt, all that went into that whole thing.
yeah,
Yeah.
oh, I cut somebody off. Or read. I didn't mean to cut you off.
I didn't mean to cut you off either.
I was just gonna say that, like, you know, it does feel like something, yeah, something does need to come out, you know, and that's like part of the process of like you need to there's a necessity of like the ideas and the emotions, and I think that for me, you know, and maybe you guys identify with this, anyone on the panel, because I know we're all like songwriters and producers, and you know, you it's one of the main ways that you like make sense of yourself. And it's very important in terms of like expressing the things to the world that you want to express. And you do feel changed afterwards, that like after you've like finished a project and it's mixed, it's mastered, and it's out there, there's a moment of like, well, now what? You know, it's almost like, you know, there was, it's you know, it's a part of you that's out there, and like having separated that part of you from yourself, at least for me, it was like a kind of like, need to like reorient myself and like, what's the next thing I'm supposed to be working on? Like, what am I going to do now? You know, and that's one of the most exciting moments, is like when something is on the horizon of like, what about this concept, or what about this idea, or these songs I've been working on, what order will they go in? And like that, you know, getting back to a point of, you know, making something is one of the most like exciting feelings.
And you know, probably why a lot of us are all here is because of that, you know, excitement and draw, that feeling of being compelled towards, you know, the creative industry, towards being creative. I want to thank all three of you for like making the time, for being awesome and being, you know, people worthy of, you know, being on this panel and representing Denver. Thank you guys so much, Joseph and Jelie and Kori. I hope that I get to collaborate with y'all's at some point in the future, whatever that looks like, and at the very least that I'm able to support you. And so please keep me in the loop with any releases that you have. And for anyone who did not get their information, maybe if you want to just drop in your links one more time, or copy and paste those again, so that people can connect with your art. And I think that we'll probably give y'all's a few moments before if there's something happening in about 12 minutes. But I think we're going to end this panel here. Reed, do you have anything else to say as we wrap things up? Oh, I don't know if I really said this, but my name is Mona. I helped Reed run the local chapter here in Denver. And yeah, I'll put my website on here in case anyone wants to check out what I do.
Awesome. Yeah, I was like really resonating with what y'all were saying about just a second ago, what you were saying, Kori, about like when I make things, a lot of times I feel like there's a outside force, like some sort of higher power that's like kind of guiding, or like just getting into the flow state. And that's what you're saying was kind of like making me think about. It feels like sometimes things just like are channeled through and I have less control over it than I think I do.
I always just say let it come, and then you're responsible for whatever's there, but like give it time to be what it needs to be.
Kind of like a baby, like you were saying, like you can't like make the baby, like it is what it is, and you're just kind of like shaping and nurturing it. That's how I feel a lot of times with like making things, especially music.
I like the idea of like how to stay creative, like where your inspiration comes from, how to keep Denver weird. I'm curious if any of you were howling last year.
We howled.
There was some howling happening.
Definitely howled, and have some dogs at the house, and there's like a howl fest it's at 8 o'clock every night. It's like a howl fest.
I definitely would. I think I think I called Reed one time, or I forget exactly how it happened, but I got to experience your guys's howling from afar. I think Reed walked around his garage with his phone out, or I forget exactly how it happened, but I know that I heard the howling. At the time I was in New York also trying to stay creative, but they were banging on pans. So I guess it's a different kind of creative release to be like, hey, we hear you, we support you, we're thankful for you. That's kind of, I guess I'll have a question in that realm. How are you supporting others to make sure they stay creative?
Is that for us?
Yep.
Oh yeah. I mean, I try my best, like from my kind of editorial standpoint, to kind of really highlight the people that do put the full thought into putting their music together, to like really give them a spotlight and try to interpret their music as they've tried to interpret it to me. Like I try to do best by them and just like tell their story, and also honor their creative work, because I think that's more important than just like being like, hey, listen to this single. I think like helping people understand who this artist is, what they're trying to say, is kind of critical to getting someone that may not know into it, or who needs like an introduction.
Yeah, thanks so much for doing that article a while back, Kori. On the yeah, that was awesome. You like encapsulated it better than I had in my head.
Yeah, same. There were a couple articles written about my album, but like Kori's was like amazing article. It was just a story. It was like put together so well.
Thank y'all.
But also, like you really like understood like you were saying things like, oh yeah, he understands what I was trying to say. So that was really cool.
The question goes for everybody. How are any of the rest of you trying to highlight creativity happening around you?
I'm sorry. I've been highlighting or helping other people stay creative by teaching. That's the number one way that I feel I can help people. Besides, kind of sitting in the producer seat many times when I'm engineering and trying to get a specific or type of performance out of an artist. Teaching is a pillar for that. The number one question people always have is workflow. Outside of how to actually make the noise, they want to know what to do after they make the first noise. So I just help people map things out in their mind so that they can get it out in the computer or get it into audio and use the audio to express themselves.
I actually had a question about sort of workflow to go off of that. Y'all are talking about kind of creating sort of universes and large concepts like narratives with your storytelling. And for me, I'm trying to do that and I'm having trouble staying like organized, keeping track of characters and objects and symbols that are like in the story. So I just wonder how, as sort of veterans of this storytelling realm, how do you stay organized through that process?
I was a really deep believer in like journaling, and I still am. But at the time of like working on the album, I was keeping like multiple journals, and like multiple journals and multiple like Google Docs. But they were just like making list of things and like, trying to imagine that world of the album and like, like where does it take place, roughly what time, who's involved, like what do I know about these people, and then just kind of like having that as a sort of like skeleton that I then sort of like fill out or embellish with like the music and the actual making of the art. But kind of thinking about those things or just like trying to imagine it and just like writing ideas down when they come kind of helped me.
Okay, cool. Kori, what about you?
That's a tough one. I think my mind just kind of returns and gets to a continuity. Like I haven't done a full concept where I've had to keep track of each character in that way. Actually, let me kind of drill that back. When I've had to like kind of intertwine various things, like an interview with like 6 or 7 people, and I have to kind of like relate all those experiences together. It's kind of like the whole needle and thread thing. Just making sure everything kind of continues to the next person in a sense. Well, everything that's supposed to continue does continue. And it's like finding that needle and thread and being like, how does this connect to this, kind of like an insane, like a conspiracy theory type of situation. But I think those are so important to just understanding like how this relates to that and like why throw in this person here. And even just like when I'm working on music stuff, it's just like, why introduce this concept? Oh, because it's going to relate to this thing down the road. Or I want this. And even like kind of vision boarding it and being like, this is the eventual conclusion I want to get to. How do I put this element there to get to that? And just like kind of using that string theory to just be like, okay, what do I need to bring along? Because not everything needs to come along when you are attaching these characters. Just like the main things that will bring it kind of full circle to the next realm it needs to be.
Like only what's necessary.
Yeah, I don't know if that helped at all.
Okay. I'm imagining just drawing on this blank wall like a bunch of stringing it all together.
Yeah,
That's kind of what it's like.
Sorry, Kori's explanation was like the difference between reading the book and watching the movie. It's like, nah, you gotta read the book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's very true. Yeah, some people are more movie forward and some people are more like literary forward. I guess I'm the latter.
Thanks, that helps.
Now's when you get to throw any last words in where you'd be like, man, I really wanted to say this and there was 2 minutes left and I could have said it, but I didn't. I'm giving you that room right now. Did you leave it all on the table? Any of you? When are we gonna hang out in Denver? Any of you?
This summer. Come on out this summer.
Yeah.
Okay, see you there.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us. It was great to have you here.
Thanks for having us.
For sure.
Thank you.
I hope you'll stick around. Also, if you haven't already done so, put your socials in the chat, and if you've done it already, do it again, because there's new people that have been joining, and